People think RV parks are harmless. Just families passing through, retirees chasing warm weather, the occasional road tripper trying to save money. But if you've ever stayed at one long enough, you start noticing things. How some rigs never move. How certain sites stay empty, even when the park is full. How people avoid looking at you after dark, like eye contact might invite something over. Tonight I'm going to tell you 3 stories, 3 terrifying encounters that happened at RV parks. And the worst part? All 3 people swear the same thing. Whatever they ran into wasn't just a creepy person. It felt older than that. I'm going to call the first guy Evan, because he asked me not to use his real name. Evan was in his late 20s and working a job that kept him moving, contract work, short-term gigs, that kind of thing. He didn't have a permanent place, so he bought an older used travel trailer and lived out of it. Not glamorous, but it was his. This happened in early fall, when the nights start getting colder but the days still feel normal. He'd been driving most of the day and pulled into this RV park just outside a small town. The sign looked sun-faded, the kind where the letters are cracking and you can tell it's been there since the 90s. The office was still open, so Evan went in to check in. A woman behind the counter handed him a clipboard without saying much. Her hair was tied back tight, and she looked tired in a way that felt permanent. Evan filled out the form. She glanced at it and asked flatly, "You staying just the night?" "Yeah," Evan said. "Just one." She nodded and slid a little paper map across the counter. "Site 17. Evan looked down at the map. Site 17 was near the back, almost against the tree line. He wasn't thrilled about being that far from the office, but he didn't care enough to argue. As he took the map, he noticed something taped behind the counter. A printed sheet titled, "Quiet Hours/Park Rules." Normal stuff. No loud music. Pets leashed. Speed limit. But at the bottom, there was one line that didn't fit. Do not enter Site 17 if you are not assigned to it. Evan actually laughed a little, thinking it was a weird joke. The woman didn't laugh back. She just watched him. Evan stopped smiling. "Is that, like an inside thing?" She answered without blinking. "People wander." And that was it. No explanation. No tone. Just, people wander. Evan felt a tiny chill, but he shrugged it off. RV parks have weird rules sometimes. People steal generators, break into rigs, mess with propane lines. A warning could be anything. He drove to Site 17. It was a corner spot, backed up against thick trees. The ground was uneven, the gravel looked older, and there was something about the area that felt muffled. Like the sound changed. He backed his trailer in, got it level, and stepped out into the evening air. The sun was low orange, and the tree line made long shadows that seemed too dark for the time of day. Evan walked over to hook up power. The pedestal was there, but it looked wrong. Not broken, exactly. More like it had been tampered with repeatedly. Scratches around the lock. Old tape marks. The cover was shut, but the hinge looked bent. He flipped it open. There were outlets inside, and a breaker switch, but there was no label, no meter, nothing modern. It looked like the inside hadn't been updated in decades. He plugged in anyway, flipped the breaker. Nothing. His trailer stayed dead. No lights. No hum. No AC. Just quiet. He tried again. Still nothing. He checked his cord. Fine. He shut the pedestal and stood there, annoyed. It was already getting darker and he didn't want to go back to the office to complain. He told himself he could make it one night without shore power. He had a charged phone, a flashlight, and enough battery to run a few basic things. He went inside, opened a can of chili, ate it cold, and scrolled on his phone until the signal started dropping. That's when he heard the first knock. It wasn't at the door. It sounded like it came from the side of the trailer. 3 knocks. Slow. Firm. Like someone knocking on wood. Evan froze mid-scroll. He waited for a voice. Hey man, or, sorry to bother you. Nothing. Then, 3 more knocks. Same rhythm. Evan set his phone down and listened. He could hear faint movement outside, gravel shifting, but it was hard to tell from inside the trailer. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped to the window, pushing the curtain aside. Outside was dim. The last daylight was dying. But the beam of his flashlight hit gravel, the power pedestal, the trees. No one. Evan felt that prickle of irritation. Like someone was messing with him. He opened the door and stepped out. Cold air hit his face. The park smelled like pine and damp earth. A few distant rigs had porch lights on, but back here it was darker. Evan swept his flashlight beam around. No one. He walked a few steps into the gravel, calling out. Hello? Nothing answered, except the sound of his own voice being swallowed by the trees. He went back inside and locked the door. He told himself it was probably just a kid running around. Maybe someone's dog bumped the side. Anything. He sat back down. 2 minutes later, it happened again. 3 knocks. But this time, it wasn't on the side. It was on the window. Right beside him. Evan whipped his head toward it. The curtain didn't move, but the glass vibrated slightly with the last knock, like a fingertip had just tapped it. Evan's stomach tightened. He leaned in slowly and pulled the curtain aside. There was a face outside the glass. Not close enough to be pressed against it, just close enough that the flashlight he'd left on the table lit it from below. It was a man. At least, it looked like a man. His skin was pale, almost gray. His eyes were open too wide, like he was forcing them open. And his mouth was slightly parted, like he was trying to breathe quietly. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't frowning. He was just staring. Evan stumbled back and nearly knocked the table. The man didn't move. Evan's voice came out rough. Hey! What the hell? The man tilted his head slowly, like a bird listening. Evan grabbed the flashlight and shined it directly at the window. The light hit the man's face. And Evan realized something that made his blood go cold. The man's eyes weren't reflecting the light the way normal eyes do. They looked dull. Flat. Like glass marbles that weren't quite facing the right way. Evan backed toward the door, heart pounding. His first instinct was to yell, to threaten, to make it clear he had a weapon, even if he didn't. But before he could, the man lifted one hand and tapped the glass 3 times. Then he turned, smoothly, almost silently, and walked away into the dark between the trees. Evan stood there shaking, staring at the curtain like it might part again. He didn't follow him. He didn't step outside. He locked every lock and turned off his interior light. Then he sat in the dark and listened. For a while, nothing happened. And that almost felt worse. Because the park wasn't quiet the way a normal park is quiet. There was no distant laughter. No radio noise. No dogs barking. It was like the whole place was holding its breath. Around midnight, Evan's phone buzzed, signal finally coming back just enough. A text from an unknown number. You have power. Use it. Evan stared at it. He hadn't given his number to anyone except the office. He got another text. Do not run off battery at 17. His hands went cold. He typed back without thinking. Who is this? No reply. He sat there, breathing hard, mind racing. He told himself it was the office woman. Maybe some automated message. Maybe a weird park policy. But something in his gut told him that wasn't it. He waited, then, against every instinct, he turned his interior light back on. He didn't want to. But the fear of the unknown was starting to override his fear of being seen. He grabbed the flashlight and went to the door, unlocked it, cracked it open. The night air was colder now. The trees looked like a wall. He walked to the power pedestal and flipped it open again. This time, there was a faint humming sound. Not from his trailer, from the pedestal itself. The breaker looked the same. The outlets looked the same. But now there was something else. A second cord was plugged into it. A thick black cord. Evan hadn't plugged that in. It ran from the pedestal and disappeared into the trees behind his sight. He followed it with the flashlight beam. The cord snaked through the brush and vanished into darkness, like it was feeding something out there. Evan's stomach churned. He didn't want to touch it. He didn't want to know. But he also didn't want to stay connected to whatever that was. He reached out and grabbed the cord. It was warm. Not sitting in the sun warm. Warm like something had been pulling power through it hard. He yanked it. The cord didn't budge. It felt anchored. Evan pulled harder. The cord vibrated slightly, like it was under tension. Then, somewhere in the trees, something moved. Not a rustle. Not a squirrel. A heavier shift. Like a person repositioning their weight. Evan let go of the cord like it burned him, and backed away. His flashlight beam shook as he pointed it into the tree-line. He saw nothing. But he heard something. A sound that was almost like breathing. Slow. Careful. Right beyond where the cord disappeared. Evan backed up to his trailer, lungs tight, eyes stinging. He wasn't thinking about rules anymore. He wasn't thinking about being polite. He got into his truck, started it, and turned the headlights on full blast toward the trees. The beams lit up the brush, the trunks, the low branches. Still nothing. But the cord. The cord moved. It twitched, like something on the other end had just tugged it. Evan put the truck in drive. And that's when his trailer lights flickered on. Just for a second. Like the trailer had finally gotten power. Then they went out again. Then on again. A stuttering rhythm, like a heartbeat. Evan's throat went dry. He looked toward the pedestal. The breaker flipped down on its own. Evan watched it happen. No hand. No wind. No vibration strong enough. It just clicked down. And the humming stopped. The black cord went slack. And from the trees, a shape stepped forward. Not fully into the light, just enough that Evan saw a shoulder, an arm, the side of a head. It was the same man. Pale face. Wrong eyes. But now Evan noticed something else. The man's clothes looked like they'd been wet for days. Dark stains clung to the fabric. And his hand, his right hand, was blackened, like it had been burned. The man lifted his face toward the headlights, and Evan heard his voice. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even clear. But it sounded like someone trying to speak through water. "Yours is on." Evan slammed the accelerator. He didn't even care about unhooking properly. He didn't care about anything except distance. His trailer jerked, the hitch strained, and gravel sprayed behind him as he sped toward the exit. In his mirror, he saw the man take one slow step forward. Then another. Not chasing. Just walking, like he knew Evan would leave either way. Evan made it to the office area, didn't stop, and rolled right through the exit. He drove until he hit the highway and didn't slow down until the park was far behind. The next morning, he called the RV park to complain and ask what the hell happened at Site 17. A different woman answered. Evan asked if there had been someone wandering around last night. If there were issues with power. If anyone had been messing with the pedestal. There was a pause on the phone. Then the woman said quietly, "We don't rent Site 17 anymore." Evan felt his stomach drop. "What do you mean?" "I was assigned to it." Another pause. "We haven't assigned that site in over a year," she said. "There's no power there. It's been disconnected." Evan swallowed. "I have a receipt." The woman sounded suddenly nervous. "Sir, what name is on your receipt?" Evan looked down at the crumpled paper in his cup holder. He read the name printed at the bottom. It wasn't the woman from the desk. It wasn't any name he recognized. It was just one word. Wander. And when he looked at the phone number, printed on the receipt, it wasn't a number. It was the exact same unknown number that had texted him. The second story was sent in by a woman I'll call Marissa. She and her husband had a small motorhome, and they liked taking weekend trips. Nothing fancy, just an easy way to get out of the city. This happened during a summer road trip. They stopped at an RV park near a lake. It was the kind of place where half the spots were seasonal, with decks and potted plants and little lawn ornaments that had clearly been there for years. When they pulled in, everything felt normal. A little crowded, a little loud. Kids on bikes. Someone grilling. A radio playing country music from 2 rows over. They got a spot near the middle of the park, not too far from the bathhouse and the little general store. The first night was fine. The second night is when it started. Around 2 a.m., Marissa woke up because she heard someone outside. Not footsteps, more like soft dragging. Like fabric sliding over gravel. She nudged her husband. "Do you hear that?" He grunted, half asleep. "It's probably a raccoon." But it didn't sound like an animal. Marissa stayed still, listening. The dragging sound moved past their rig, then stopped right outside their door. Then came a knock. Gentle. Almost polite. Marissa's eyes snapped open fully. She stared at the door like it might open by itself. Another knock. Her husband finally sat up. "Who is it?" he called. No answer. Marissa's heart started to pound. Because if someone needed help, if someone was lost, why weren't they speaking? Her husband swung his legs down, annoyed more than scared, and reached for the blinds near the front window. Marissa whispered, "Don't." He pulled the blind back. A woman stood there. She looked like she was in her 30s or 40s. Long hair hanging messily. Bare feet. She wore a thin nightgown that looked too light for how cold the night air was. Her face was turned slightly downward, like she didn't want to be seen clearly. Her husband cracked the door open, just a few inches. "Ma'am?" he said. "Are you okay?" The woman didn't look up. She said, in a voice so quiet Marissa almost didn't hear it, "I can't find my place." Her husband's posture softened. "Do you know your site number?" The woman's head tilted slowly. "I forgot." Marissa felt something tighten inside her. It wasn't that the woman looked scary, she looked wrong in a more subtle way. Like she didn't belong in the moment. Her husband said, "Okay. Where's your rig? We can walk you to the office." The woman finally lifted her face. And Marissa's stomach dropped. The woman's eyes were red around the rims, like she'd been crying for days. But her expression wasn't sad. It was empty, like her face didn't know what emotion to choose. She stared past her husband, into the RV, and her gaze landed on Marissa. And when she looked at Marissa, her mouth twitched into something close to a smile. Marissa whispered, "Close the door." Her husband hesitated. "Ma'am, do you have a phone? We can call." The woman's voice sharpened suddenly, losing that quiet softness. "Let me in." Not a request. A demand? Her husband blinked. No. We can help you from out here." The woman took one step forward, and the gap in the door widened as if she was trying to push it with her presence alone. "Let me in," she said again. Marissa's husband pushed the door closed and locked it. His face had gone pale. They stood in silence, both listening. Outside, the woman didn't leave. They could hear her breathing. Right on the other side of the door. Then came the sound Marissa will never forget. Fingernails. Scraping lightly down the door's surface. Slow, careful strokes. Like the woman was feeling the door. Marissa held her hand over her mouth to keep from making noise. Then the scraping stopped. And the woman spoke, her voice now calm again, almost friendly. "I'll come back," Marissa whispered. "Call someone." Her husband grabbed his phone. No signal. He tried again, moving to a different window. Still nothing. The park had been full, but this area suddenly felt like it sat inside a dead zone. They waited. Minutes passed. They heard nothing. Finally, her husband exhaled like he'd been holding his breath. "Maybe she left." Marissa didn't answer. She couldn't stop staring at the door. Then a knock came again. But not on their door. On the back of the RV. The woman's voice drifted through the thin walls. "I'm back." Her husband's eyes widened. "How?" Because the RV wasn't easy to circle quietly. Gravel was loud. Steps were loud. But she had moved from the front door to the back without them hearing a thing. Marissa grabbed a flashlight and shined it through the back window. The beam hit darkness. Then it hit her. The woman was standing so close to the glass that her breath fogged it. Her face was inches away, eyes wide, staring straight in. And she smiled. Not a normal smile. A smile that stretched too far, like her mouth didn't remember where to stop. Marissa screamed. Her husband yanked Marissa away from the window and pulled the curtains shut. The woman laughed, quietly, on the other side of the glass. Then came the dragging sound again. Slowly moving away. Marissa and her husband stayed awake until sunrise. When morning came, they went straight to the office. They told the manager everything. The manager, an older man, listened with this stiff expression like he'd heard it before but didn't want to. When Marissa described the woman's nightgown and bare feet, the manager's face changed. He didn't ask questions. He didn't doubt them. He just said very carefully, "Did you let her in?" Marissa shook her head. "No." The manager nodded once, like that answer mattered more than anything else. Then he opened a drawer and pulled out a laminated sheet, old, worn at the edges. It was a photocopy of a missing person poster. The photo was black and white, slightly blurry. But Marissa felt her skin turn cold as soon as she saw it. It was her. The same woman. Same hair. Same face. The poster said the woman's name was Diane. Missing for 6 years. Last seen, this RV park. Marissa's voice trembled. "She was here last night." The manager didn't argue. He didn't even look surprised. He leaned closer and said, low enough that only they could hear, "She comes around when people park where she used to." Marissa frowned. "What do you mean?" The manager tapped their site number on the map. "You're in 32B, he said. "That used to be her spot." Marissa's husband swallowed. "So, what happened to her?" The manager looked out the window toward the rows of RVs. "There was a storm," he said. "A bad one. Power went out. Trees down. People panicked." He paused, like he was choosing his words. "She was running from something," Marissa whispered. "From who?" The manager's face tightened. He didn't answer directly. He just said, "Some folks claimed she never made it out of the park." Marissa felt her throat close. "So where is she?" The manager lowered his voice further. "I can show you something," he said. "But you need to understand, this is not for tourists. This is not a ghost story." He led them behind the office, to a small maintenance shed. He unlocked it and stepped inside. The air smelled like oil and old wood. On a shelf, there was a box. Inside the box were items in plastic bags, like evidence. A cracked phone. A bracelet. A set of keys. And a piece of fabric. A thin white fabric, with a floral pattern. A nightgown. Marissa stared at it, feeling dizzy. The manager said, "They found this by the lake." Marissa's husband whispered, "So she drowned?" The manager's eyes shifted. "No," he said. "The lake was searched." He swallowed. "They found the nightgown," he repeated. "Not the woman." Marissa felt her stomach drop. "Then what?" The manager cut her off. "If she comes back tonight," he said, "do not open the door. Do not speak to her. Do not look too long." Marissa's husband stared. "What happens if you do?" The manager's voice was barely above a whisper. "She learns you can hear her," he said. "And then she won't just knock." They left. They didn't even pack calmly. They threw things into cabinets, slammed doors, started the engine, and drove out. But Marissa said the worst part came later. Weeks later, back home, they were parked in their driveway, unloading the motorhome. Marissa was inside, wiping down the counter, when she heard it. A dragging sound. Soft. Outside. She froze, cloth in hand, breath caught. Then she heard a knock. Gentle. Polite. On the RV door. And a voice, quiet but clear, said, "I can't find my place." The last story comes from a guy I'll call Trevor. Trevor was a single dad taking his young son on a short trip, one of those just the two of us vacations. He'd rented a small camper and chose a simple RV park off a highway because it was cheap and close to a state park. They arrived in the late afternoon, checked in, and set up. The park was quieter than most. Not dead, just quiet. Mostly older people. A few long-term rigs. Lots of little porch lights and wind chimes. Trevor's son, who was 7, was excited. Running around, pointing at the other campers, asking if they could go to the playground. Trevor cooked hot dogs, they ate outside, and the sun went down. That's when his son said something that made Trevor laugh at first. "Dad," he said, "someone lives under our camper." Trevor smiled. "What?" His son pointed at the underside of the camper, toward the shadowy space beneath it. "I saw eyes," the boy said. "Right there." Trevor assumed it was a raccoon or a stray cat. RV parks attract animals. Trash, food, warm spaces. He grabbed a flashlight and crouched down, shining it under the camper. He saw nothing. Just dirt, some weeds, and the dark shapes of pipes and supports. "No one's under there," Trevor said. His son didn't laugh. He didn't relax. He looked genuinely worried. "I saw eyes," he repeated. "And they blinked." Trevor felt a small chill but brushed it away. That night, his son had trouble falling asleep. He kept looking toward the floor, toward the side of the camper that sat closest to the ground. Trevor finally told him, "It's probably an animal. If you hear something, we'll scare it off." The boy nodded, but he didn't look convinced. Around 1 a.m., Trevor woke up to his son shaking him. "Dad," the boy whispered urgently. "He's under there." Trevor sat up, instantly alert. "What do you mean?" His son pointed down at the floor. Trevor listened. At first, he heard nothing. Then, a sound. A slow scratching. Not at the door. Not at the window. Under the camper. Like fingernails dragging along the bottom paneling. Trevor's heart started to pound. He leaned down, pressing his ear toward the floor. The scratching stopped. Then came a soft thump, like something shifting position directly beneath them. Trevor swallowed and reached for his flashlight. He clicked it on and aimed it toward the floor, like that would do anything. His son whispered, voice shaking. "I told you." Trevor tried to keep his voice calm. "It's probably an animal," he said, but it sounded fake even to him. Because animals don't scratch in patterns. And this had felt deliberate. Trevor got out of bed, moving carefully, and stepped to the small window near the floor on the side of the camper. He pulled the curtain back just enough to peek out. Outside, it was dark. Porch lights from neighboring rigs cast small pools of yellow. Trevor shined his flashlight beam down toward the ground. At first, he saw nothing. Then his light caught something reflective. Eyes. 2 eyes staring up from beneath the camper. Trevor's stomach turned to ice. They weren't raccoon eyes. They were too steady. Too high off the ground for a small animal. And too aware. Trevor stumbled back from the window. He didn't want to believe it, but his brain immediately formed the image. A person was lying under their camper. Watching. Trevor grabbed his phone, no signal. Of course. He stepped to the door, hand on the lock. His son whispered, "Don't open it." Trevor hesitated. If it was a person, opening the door might be exactly what they wanted. So instead, Trevor did the next best thing. He turned on every light inside the camper. All at once, the small space filled with harsh brightness. Then he stomped on the floor hard and shouted, "Get out from under there!" Silence. Then, a slow movement sound. Like a body sliding. Trevor held his breath, staring at the window. He didn't see the eyes anymore. But he heard something else. A soft laugh. Low. Muffled. Like it was coming through dirt. Trevor's skin crawled. He pulled his son close and sat on the bed with his back against the wall, facing the door, holding the flashlight like it could stop a human being. They stayed like that until morning. When daylight came, Trevor stepped outside. He immediately checked under the camper. There were marks in the dirt. Not paw prints. Finger marks. Dragging marks. Like someone had been lying there and pulling themselves along the ground. Trevor felt sick. He went straight to the office. The manager there, a different park, different story, looked tired, like this place had been wearing him down for years. Trevor told him everything. The manager didn't look shocked. He sighed, leaned back, and said, "Okay. Did he try talking to you?" Trevor frowned. "Who?" The manager rubbed his forehead. "The guy under the rigs," he said, like it was a normal sentence. Like he was talking about a stray dog. Trevor's mouth went dry. "There's a guy, living under people's campers?" The manager didn't answer right away. He opened a drawer and pulled out a small notebook. He flipped through it. Trevor saw pages filled with dates and site numbers. Finally, the manager said, "It happens sometimes. People camp rough. They hide. They sneak into parks." Trevor said. "This wasn't some homeless guy looking for warmth. He was watching us." The manager's eyes flicked up. "Did you see his face?" Trevor hesitated. "No." The manager nodded slowly, like that was good. "Okay," he said. "That's good." Trevor felt anger rise. "Good? Are you kidding me?" The manager leaned forward, voice lower now. "You don't want to see his face," he said. Trevor's throat tightened. "Why?" The manager stared at Trevor for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "Because if he knows you can describe him, he doesn't come under the rig anymore." Trevor's skin went cold. "What does he do?" The manager didn't answer directly. Instead, he asked Trevor a strange question. "How high off the ground is your camper?" Trevor blinked. "I don't know. A couple feet?" The manager nodded to himself. Then he stood, grabbed a ring of keys, and motioned for Trevor to follow. They walked to the far end of the park, where the sites backed up against a line of trees. The manager stopped in front of an empty site. It looked normal, except the gravel was disturbed, like something had been dragged through it. The manager pointed to the ground. "There used to be a rig here," he said. "Family. Same as you. Kid same age?" Trevor's stomach tightened. The manager continued, voice flat but strained. "The dad came in one morning saying the kid kept hearing scratching under the floor," he said. "Same story? Same fear?" Trevor whispered. "What happened?" The manager's jaw clenched. "They left," he said. "Drove out in a hurry." Trevor exhaled, tense but relieved. "Okay. So?" The manager cut him off. "They left, but they forgot something," he said. Trevor stared. "What?" The manager pointed to the trees beyond the site. They forgot the kid, he said. Trevor's blood went cold. What do you mean they forgot the kid? Trevor whispered, voice cracking. The manager looked like he hated saying it. They thought he was in the back, he said. He wasn't. They didn't realize until they stopped for gas an hour later. They called the police. Came back with officers. Trevor's mouth went dry. And? He asked. The manager's eyes shifted toward the trees again. They found little footprints, he said, leading from the site into the woods. Trevor shook his head slowly. No. No way. The manager's voice stayed calm, but his eyes looked haunted. They never found the boy, he said. But they found something else. Trevor swallowed hard. What? The manager leaned in and said the last part like he was afraid the park itself might hear him. They found the underside of the rig, he said, scratched up, like something had been trying to get out. Trevor stared at him, frozen. The manager straightened and forced a calm tone back into his voice. Just don't stay here another night, he said. And when you load up, count your kid. Don't assume. Trevor didn't argue. He went back to his camper, packed up, and left immediately. But that's not where it ends. Trevor said that later that week, back at home, he was unloading the camper rental in the driveway. His son was inside the house playing video games. Trevor walked around the camper to check that he hadn't left anything. He crouched near the underside, just a habit now. And he saw it. Scratches. Fresh scratches on the bottom panel. Like fingernails had dragged along it recently. Trevor felt his throat tighten. Because the camper hadn't been in any RV park since they left. He slowly stood up. And from beneath the camper, from the shadowed space under it, he heard a soft laugh. Low. Muffled. Right under his feet. And then a whisper, barely audible, like breath pushed through dirt. Too high. So those were 3 terrifying encounters at an RV park. A site that supposedly had no power, until something in the woods needed it. A woman who knocks politely, until she realizes you can hear her. And something that watches from underneath, waiting for the one moment you stop paying attention. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories. If want to share your story, share at belladarktales@gmail.com.